Hello and welcome to another edition of Grown Folks Business on a Thursday evening. Listen, glad to be here. I can, always count on a couple people, more so than others. And Bob and Jay, you guys have become mainstays. But as we await our other consistent presence, Lisa, because the continuation of this discussion was because she was not here last week, primarily. Now it was more to talk about because we left off in a spot that I think is worth exploring, in regards to how useful are our feelings. Um, but she's on her way. She'll get here soon enough, and we'll just have that wonderful discussion that she missed out on contributing to last week. But in the meantime, as we continue uh, the state of you, how useful are our feelings? Uh, I wanted to pick up first with this question, and then I want to build that bridge, that small, tiny, probably two-step bridge that leads us to something Jay was making sure to highlight last week was the difference between emotions and feelings, which was worthy of more conversation. And again, when Lisa gets here, we'll kind of recap a little bit and allow for her to give us some of her ideas and thoughts about the topic. Hopefully, she makes it. I know she's got something else going on, but otherwise, we'll always steer the ship the way it needs to be steered. So, with that being said, Bob, Jay, good to see you guys. Tanya, thanks for doing what you do. We're gonna have some intellectually stimulating engaged conversation. And the first question, which I think is a good one, and I'm going to start with you, Jay. Um, are feelings an indicator of selflessness or selfishness? Are feelings, and I mean when they're, the ones we can recognize, not the ones we internalize, with the same way we define feelings and understood this conversation to be about feelings last week. Are they an indicator of selfishness or selflessness? And you definitely have some wiggle room with how you paint it, and you can give a description or whatever makes the most sense. Speak broadly or find that thing that disrupts the question itself. But I'm here for the answer. Go ahead, Jay.
Oh, I believe that feelings are just signals. Um the outcome is always left up to the one who's experiencing those feelings, but I think feelings itself is just signals indicating that something needs our attention. If that's coming from a selfish place or a selfless place, only the one who's experiencing it can really determine that in that moment. I don't think it's just a cookie cutter yes or no, right or wrong type thing. I think it's definitely experiential, and I think it's also situational and individualistic based.
That's in line with the answer I thought you might give. So, so when I constructed that, I said, yeah, Jay will have a good answer, because it's nuanced and yeah, it can be subjective. But when I think in terms of the selflessness or the selfishness aspect of your disposition, so to speak, your mode at the moment, that feelings situation that you may be uh, encountering or enduring, um, if you are not careful, I think it easily skews to a higher percentage of selfishness. Um, and that's just in those interactions that I think paint outside the lines of logic when it comes to feelings. As I think I've said before, when somebody's, I feel this way, I feel this way. If you leave the realm of what's actually taking place or what's actually going on, and you get consumed with some of that feeling space, I think it starts to become more of a selfish act because you don't care who you're impacting with an adherence to the feelings energy aspect of things. But I started with you because I knew you would have some nuance to introduce, and you're absolutely correct in the middle of the road being an option of those two things. It's not a black or white type situation, but just it skews one way heavier to me. Bob, you haven't. Oh, go ahead, Jay. Go ahead, Jay.
I was going to say it kind of goes to the conversation we had last week. It's like when you asked the question, do you think about others first or do you think about yourself? Someone could easily say, because I think about myself, that's selfish. Where another person may say it's good that you're thinking about yourself first because it can be an endangerment to others. And I think that two things happen whenever we have an action. I can view things one way, but then there's also me as the person who is experiencing it, but also the person who is receiving some type of response from that. So you might say, Jay, you're selfish, and I might say, well, no, this is really a selfless act because I'm really practicing restraint with you. And you might say, but no, you're being selfish still. So it's kind of like that thing. There's perception, and then there's actually what's going on and taking place, you know?
Absolutely. And yeah, so real quick, I'll say I totally believe both are possible. Otherwise, the question makes no sense. I think it's understood to a degree that you're removing some elements of feelings when you become selfless in the communication of something. Does that so there's something that allows for it to be more than just an expression of feelings when it becomes the selfless aspect that we're alluding to. It can be included and considered and understood, but somehow, some way, there's a slight detachment, and it allows for it to be a selfless act. That's the way I kind of look at it. But I think we walk on the same side of the street. I really do. Bob, you have any input on what you think, selfless or selfish?
Yeah, I think that first of all, I think Jay Dwayne is exactly right. That it signals and so forth, not inherently selfish or selfless. But I think also to your point, Felton, I think some of us have a bias around feelings that because we are familiar or accustomed to people who are indulgent with their feelings in a way that is selfish. And if you are indulgent with your feelings, and if it's all about your feelings, and if your feelings become the ground on which we walk, then it's a very selfish plane because you aren't allowing anyone else in the room. Your feelings set the stage. And so it's all about your feelings. And so if that's what's going on, I think that is very selfish. At the same time, I can say that feelings can be a response to empathy. And when feelings are a response to empathy, it's not selfish. It's putting yourself in that other person's place, and you're taking on something of theirs that causes those feelings to rise up. So I think the answer is what Jay Dwayne said, but I think also, though, it's a matter of how the individual interacts with their feelings and what they do with their feelings. And, we know people who are, again, indulgent with their feelings, and they establish their feelings as the ground, as the stage. And so it becomes really all about them. And that is extremely selfish.
Yeah, I firmly believe that. Also, there's Lisa. I don't. You're not in the cave, are you? Nobody's kidnapped you or anything, have you? Let her go.
Yay!
Let her go. Glad you could make it. Yeah, and right on time. The thing we were just discussing, and this is before we allow you to unload based on the fact that we missed you last week for your topic. This was a topic that you and Jay Dwayne, but primarily you, because you and I have had discussions about this for years now. So yeah, this is one that I wanted your input on greatly. So here we are. I'll start where we are at the moment, and then we will circle back to some of the things from last week so that we can get a fuller view of Lisa's take on things. So, the question we are unpacking right now is: are feelings an indicator of selflessness or selfishness? And the first two or three responses, include my own, have made it understood that there's a blurring of the line. I'm saying that there's one that may weigh heavier than the other. I think we're all acknowledging that we're close in our observation of how that can be unpacked. But you take this one cold turkey and start there, and then we'll circle back.
Oh man, that's a good question. But you always have great questions. Number one, y'all know I am steeped deep in my motherhood. So my knee-jerk reaction would be it's a selfishness, except a lot of my feelings have been precipitated by my motherhood. But I have felt things in respect to how they impact my children, from even small, like even being small kids. So there are things that I would not say, or things that I would not do or expose them to, because I would think about their pain, and it would motivate me to be protective of them, but I would have to feel the burden of their pain. So an example, and since I've been married a couple times, I won't give it away. An example is one of my ex-husbands, their mother got remarried. It still doesn't give it away because both my ex-husband's mothers are divorced from their fathers. So, and my daughter, I knew nothing about it, and my daughter was not invited to the wedding. And so I was like, when I found out about it, my ex-husband actually showed me some pictures later. And I'm like, but why wasn't my daughter at least invited? And the grandma was like, well, it wasn't a real wedding anyway. And I'm like, but you had on a wedding dress. So my feelings were based on, and what I said to that mother-in-law was, when my daughter sees these pictures, when she's old enough to comprehend this, it's going to hurt her feelings. So I was in my feelings for the sake of the pain that it may cause my daughter. So the feelings that I've lived out of selflessness, but having to take a intercessory, selfish role in how I engaged others in that respect. Does that make sense?
Oh, perfect sense. So you actually, went back to last week probably without knowing it, but one of the really good interaction and exchanges we had here was about putting children's feelings first and making them and Vanessa said some really wonderful things in regards to motherhood also. So that was a place I figured you would land because of you always incorporate your children's dynamic into most of what we discuss here. So that was a no-brainer, and I did not think that I would need to bring that question back up, and I felt like we would find our way there. And exactly, that is a good way to expand upon that question, because I think selfishness and selflessness are at play in some of this, but you expanded upon it because of something Bob said. Empathy. You empathize with the feelings that your daughter would experience from being not invited to that wedding. So yeah, feelings are pretty powerful. They kind of go here, there, and everywhere, and just depends on what type of person you are and how you deal with them, I guess. Know what type of person I am. So, so I will give you the opportunity if you feel like you need to, Lisa, because we did go around the room and allow for everyone to define feelings last week. As we are discussing feelings, it is a blurry type of interpretation that we all personally have when we're talking about this. So feel free to give your definition of feelings as we continue.
So my definition of feelings, since you've asked, are my energy, the energy that moves me. So I'm not monotone with my feelings ever that I can recollect. So to me, it's my energy. So whether I'm being motivated by some negative energy on how someone feels about me, whether they are feeling um, intimidated by me, whether they are feeling abused by me, I'm picking up that energy and it determines how I proceed. So I try to be empathic with how I deal with people and deal with their feedback. So when I'm thinking of the feelings, I'm thinking of it as energy. And yes, I mean, I love you, Felton, but I mean, what I said to someone else one time in respect to their child, they said, "Oh, I hope you don't think bad about me because of what I did." And I said, "Well, no, I can't. I think that's hypocritical because if I accept myself for being like big mama, like I just want to love and hug on every kid, I have to recognize that there's an opposite and equal non-big mama. So as emotional as I am, I have to still love Felton for wanting to be super logical. I don't like it most of the time when he's the only person that can cry on his shoulder. It's awful. Um, but I have to accept that it can't be a me without a him. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you can't have the yin without the yang. That's balance, and I'm going to surprise you possibly with some of where we go when we evoke what Jay incorporated into the conversation, which is emotions and the difference between emotions and feelings. I think you may uh, view me as a more complete human once we get there, since I'm just not unfeeling. I have feelings, but I'll give you one other thing that we either got to organically last week, or maybe I got the question out. I don't recall completely, but I wanted to start with Lisa and we go around the space. And if we did talk about this, just reiterate that point or unpack it further, Jay and Bob, as we go. But do feelings have a statute of limitations? I think I either asked that directly or I alluded to it last week, but I wanted to get that one out to Lisa. Yeah, I see your face. So Lisa, I wanted you to get that one specifically. So do we have a period that we get to maybe be extra feeling, and do we need to know that it has to be a limited time frame? Even if it's extreme high, I think balance is important. Even if it's a great feeling, you got to realize it's not going to last forever. So, what do you think, Lisa?
Well, since you ended it on that note, that's different. Because first I was going to say no, because I literally just left a meeting where one person talking to the new police chief and this is a black person telling the new white police chief and the whole community, y'all, we got to just get over all this stuff and we just got to start new and fresh. So that's the first thing I thought about when you talk about feelings and the expiration of feelings. You oftentimes the feelings, they stay fresh and new because scabs keep getting torn off. So if the feelings that you first experience, whether good or bad, don't have the ability to ebb and flow, then that is creating what actually has been termed a new disease, fibromyalgia, if you stay too engaged in the extreme feelings, whether they're extreme lows or extreme highs. But I don't think they have an expiration, because if you don't get the healing from the bad feelings, then you're just going to be re-injured over and over. And then if you don't experience I think the good feelings, I just think is a natural ebb and flow. I don't know these people who just have these kumbaya relationships, whether familiar or romantic, whatever. I don't think you can have an authentic good feeling without having a bad feeling. So how do you know what's good without bad? So I do believe you do need the ebbs and flows, but I don't believe the feelings have to expire, because when I was killing it to get here, from that meeting, man, I'm listening to Gladys Knight. Oh my gosh. And the feelings, I ain't even felt love like that, but the feelings, like that I got took me way back to when I first heard that song. So I can't say that they expire.
Another, way to expand upon these questions, and a great way to do it is what you just did. You took it to a place outside of necessarily what I was considering, and you actually brought up some things that I experienced today. I went to a museum in Rockingham County, and some of the things were in the way that you're talking about feelings. They prompted me to, like, really, this is what is worth displaying in here, because it was concerning how Black Americans were framed at a certain point of our history, and it was a part of one of the exhibits. So yeah, I felt some type of way, Lisa. I did. I was like, yeah. But it's, as you state, it's the residue, right? There's a residue. So in that interaction that you witnessed today or this evening, it's about the residue. It's the unfinished work. I can apply logic to that feeling that is prompted by witnessing or interacting on something that is connected to the awful history and the awful treatment of Black Americans in this country. So yeah, I get that feeling. I can deal with that one. Jay and Bob, if this was one that you guys remember responding to, we can go to the next thing. But I did want to get that out with Lisa. Do you guys remember responding to the statute of limitations on feelings prompt, Bob?
I do not remember that.
All right. Well, maybe I didn't get to it. I know we danced around it as far as how long you dwell on some type of issue or get to have some feelings. We did some type of allusion to it. That's what made me unsure. So, Bob, go ahead. What do they have a statute of limitations?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is no. And the thing is, and Felton, you used the term unfinished business. There are things that there are things that are unfinished business. There are also sadnesses that I think you don't necessarily, you can't get past, or you can get past them. You can't, but when you bring them back up, you're going to feel them all over again, because they're sadnesses that were that sad, and they're sadnesses that were not in line with how we think life is supposed to go. So, and an example of that would be the loss of a child versus the loss of a grandparent. Or where something happened that's tragic and you can't make sense of it, and you can never make sense of it. Or the kinds of things that result in PTSD. And that kind of stuff, I think there is trauma that takes a whole lot of healing, and you can't put a statute of limitations on that.
Again, I love the expansion upon what we're discussing here. Bob, you brought in what I was going to connect based on, again, what Jay Dwayne introduced last week. I think some of that is emotion. I think some of what Lisa and yourself, Bob, were just bringing into the equation are emotion, and that's a different rabbit, like Jace brought up last week. That's a different, but it is so close. The bridge is not a far divide. It's not a far enough divide to need the bridge. You can jump over the creek. But Jay, I'm coming to you. Go ahead, Bob.
Jay Dwayne can elaborate on this because he's more of an expert. But I think that emotion is what feelings trigger, and I don't think they're the same. I think that feelings trigger emotions. I think
it's both and. It's both and. Yeah, it goes both ways. I totally agree with the there's a sliver that keeps them separated, but they're so close that they're always touching and crossing over. And I believe that. And I'll give you an example in just a minute when I get to that question. But Jay, I want to hear your statute of limitations observation first, because it's been taken to a different place than I was really considerate of. But yeah, keep going. I want to hear what you throw into it.
Yeah, I feel like we basically are all saying the same thing. Like, no, I mean, the flat answer is no. I don't think there's an expiration date on it. But to Bob's point, because there is an emotional attachment to it, the only thing that one may argue that there could possibly be some type of limitation is because feelings deal more with what you are consciously aware of. So once it goes into that beta mode or that subconscious level, you are drifting into your emotions and you may be doing things you're unaware of. But I don't think that there will technically be an expiration because emotions do trigger feelings. And so if they have even proven there are so many emotions that is housed within a person, they don't know, like people don't know all of their emotions and could literally go a lifetime not knowing all of the emotions or getting acquainted with different emotions that now trigger different feelings. So short, no, I don't think that there is an expiration to that, only because of the linked emotional component. But I do think that there is an expiration on the sensation of certain feelings in time.
Agreed. You have to go through those things to get to somewhere else, but that doesn't mean that you lose that emotional attachment to that journey uh, of unpacking, um, processing, deciphering why certain things are evoked when you have certain circumstances. Sometimes it's that person that you get around you. I just don't know what it is about them. And you might not ever know if you don't choose to explore it. So that feeling that you might get, good or bad, it's worthy of your attention for a while. Anyway, it shouldn't just run out. Um, one of the ways I was thinking of that question was, once it's been established what you were wrestling with, dealing with, emotional about, which caused you to have this feeling. Um, if everything's been communicated and we've reached a point of stability in the interaction, then I get to that point of, okay, we're done with that now, right? Like that's I understand better why this happened, blah blah blah. Let's not let that one linger. So maybe I'll apply that statute of limitations energy to something that's on that level of the feeling exchange. But I definitely agree that the overarching they don't expire um, from a natural just go away standpoint. There's some work that needs to take place in some of those interactions. Um, so we're going to talk about emotions, but I want to get this one question in, which will be specifically for Lisa, because I thought it was one that was good from last week. So I'm gonna give you this question, and I know that we covered this last week, and we kind of alluded to it with the first question. But do you consider others when your feelings take the lead, Lisa? So when your feelings are going, and you and I have had conversations around this one, and this was really a question that I wanted to ask for us to impact with you, even though we got to it last week. It's yours right now, this moment. Do you consider others when your feelings take the lead?
Ooh, I would say awful question because it's so loaded. And the reason why, I'm going to bring up my 50th birthday. And oh, I don't care. I'm cool with being 50 plus one. Um as a person who has dealt with lived through a lot of trauma and drama, I've been a people pleaser. But what I have learned is that I've been doing the people pleasing to feel worthy of love. And when I experienced arriving at 50 years old after going through all that trauma and drama, and the people who I love the most did not prioritize showing up to celebrate that I existed. It was very painful because, and I'm going to talk about it was my children, not nay four out of five. One of them lived here, so she didn't have an escape. They didn't come and they didn't prioritize just saying, we're glad you were alive. And it was very emotional and very painful. My dog is whining for some reason. And I called Felton. What did I do that for? Oh my God. Felton was like, yeah, Lisa, I hear you crying, but your kids don't owe you nothing.
Lisa, come on now. There was a lot. You got to soften that up a little bit.
It was not soft at all. I know you don't like it, but they don't owe you nothing. They don't owe you. They don't have to come and see. And I'm driving, I'm crying. I'm like, oh my God, like the stuff. But they're not. I almost forgot the question. The thing was that when you've been chided so long that your feelings don't matter, that people don't show up on the days that are set aside to say, let's celebrate somebody, right? Valentine's Day. A lot of guys like, oh, that's commercial. That's this, that's that. It is something set aside that it's mostly directed for women. And although it's commercial or not, so are Jordans, right? But to feel like the sacrifices that you make, even though you don't make them, to be celebrated, I have often felt guilty about receiving the celebration. And that's wrong. Like, no one should be made to feel guilty for wanting to have any amount of someone expressing, I see you. Because that's all it is that I see you. And because you exist, I just want to say I'm glad you exist. So that's been the challenge for me, to even not feel guilty in that. And that is still a process, because for all of those years, even having multiple husbands and going through childbirth, let alone pregnancies and rearing children, and not having someone just wake up one morning. I don't care if you make it June 23rd. I don't care if you make it May 14th. Just one morning out of the blue and say, you know what? I'm glad you registered me for kindergarten. I'm glad you drove me to school every day. We're human beings. And I personally am shaking off, and it is a process for me to try to shake off the guilty feelings, because I've been made to feel guilty. And I'm not saying Felton did it. He's who he is. And he was direct about it. And he is technically right. But as I said to him then, I do feel like we have moral responsibilities. We don't have to do anything, but we should have moral responsibilities to encourage, uplift each other. And even what the work we're doing in the community, I'm out here slamming people saying, hey, give back to who gave to you. So I think I would be hypocritical if I didn't say, wait a minute, I got 5 kids through school and I didn't put them in the microwave and turn it on. So I mean, I am dramatic with that, but that's hard. It's hard. And to feel like, oh, you shouldn't cry if those 5 kids didn't call you on your birthday. I'm a human being. And yes, my emotions, my feelings, all that got the best of me on that day.
Well, I will rebut with I was not the total jerk that she made me out to be. Although some of that was my sentiment, I fully gave you room and breath to truly unload, because you should have, and I would never, ever, ever, ever discourage someone from getting it out, because you got to get it out.
No,
But
and I do. I'm not throwing you out there saying you were a jerk. Felton was Felton. And I was over, like I was out. I probably would. Well, I ain't gonna go that far, but I was very emotional because I did want to celebrate myself, and I wanted the people who really meant something to me, not just arbitrary people to say, hey, happy birthday. But no, you weren't a jerk about it. You were a matter of fact, and you were trying to de-escalate my out of control emotions.
Yeah, my desire was for you to recalibrate more than anything, because that was not a good place to be for a long period of time. And that kind of alludes back to that statute of limitations, even if it's you policing yourself, like, okay, I'll come back to feeling this way in a little while, but right now I got to take a break from this mode of feeling. But yeah, great answer. And that would be the one that came up because that was a big deal for you. And I appreciate you. I always appreciate you got everybody here being honest and forthright with the things that make us who we are. So this question is again to revisit something that was introduced by Jay last week. So I'll start with you, Jay. Emotions are different from feelings, but how do you know the difference? This is where I share that I know I got emotional today, which can connect itself to all kinds of feelings because they are so close. But it was a good feeling, although I was emotional and to a point of, almost cry. And it was in front of a lot of people that I'm meeting this morning that I Bob and I have every week. I thought about a cousin that died tragically some years ago now, that I felt like if I had been there, it could have been a different outcome. But it was good feelings, although I was emotionally, vulnerable at the moment of sharing that. But it was the thoughts of him were good. And I think that's the dance that takes place with emotions and feelings. So we know they're different, but how do you know they're different? And that's how I know they're different. Because I'm thinking good feeling thoughts about my cousin who I miss, but I was visibly, probably, I don't know how visible it was, but I was a little, shooken up thinking about that situation. So Jay, how you know the difference?
I think that I think that that's a loaded question, and I also want to go back and say I do agree. I do believe Lisa's story, and when she came to you, I do believe you responded that way. And how dare you treat her like that? I'm advocating for Lisa. You should have gave her sweet nothings. Nobody needed you to be matter of fact in that moment.
I gave her a hug, man. What do you
No,
want?
you did. It was on the phone.
I did. When I saw you later on, Lisa, I gave you a hug. I gave you a big hug. So
we talking about in the moment. This is how we know the difference. Feelings is what you're conscious of.
Hold on, Jay. Hold on. Jay, let me get this little caveat. I don't know if anyone would have really been able to understand what was taking place when Lisa called me that day. Lisa, that was she had to get it out. And I stood there with her, man, but I had to bring the levels down and say, hey, it's a hard, cruel reality that maybe needs to be heard at this moment. So anyway, go ahead, Jay.
Thank you, Jay. Your kids don't owe you nothing. Thank you, Jay.
But I think that it's hard sometimes to separate, am I emotional, is it a place of emotion or a place of feeling? Because emotional experiences can be housed in feelings. But I think it's the things that you're conscious of. I think when you can reflect, like even thinking about how you said I was thinking about my cousin, it could easily be argued that that's a feeling that drew from emotional experiences. Meaning, yes, I dug deep and I came from it, but the argument with emotions, at least from a psychological standpoint, is that emotions are not only aren't only conscious, they're the things that are subconscious. And that's where a lot of people don't take that time. Like, we will label something as saying, and I don't know if y'all ever had this, like you've seen someone in a moment and you could tell that they were angry, but it like escalated to somewhere where they were like, I lost you. Where are you? That's when the emotions took over because they were no longer cognitive of what they were doing. It starts with they're angry and all of that. And I personally, because I took anger management, because I used to have a temper issue. And that's why I say I think about me first. And in that moment because I can't go certain places. And it's very similar to what Lisa was saying too. When you give your all to a person and they treat it like trash, it can take you to a place that you didn't even know that you were going. However, that takes you to an emotional state. And now you start to research, what is the root of that? Oh, because I was rejected. Oh, because I didn't fit in. And so you're not just rejecting this moment, you're rejecting me and saying my life is worthless. So I have very similar experiences with that. And so what I do in those moments when I'm feeling it, I can tell when it's passing. Sometimes I can tell when it's passing that feeling moment to something else where I'm not feeling like me. And I think that that's the only thing that can kind of happen in that. And I think some experiences are easier than others. Talking to me, disrespecting me is different than an adult talking to my children and disrespecting my children. Um, Different racial dynamics, different cultural dynamics. When those things come into place, they send me different places. And so I can tell I'm pulling from something else. But I think that kind of goes back to your first question. You kind of know the feelings because they do have an expiration in theory because it's leaving and going to somewhere deeper in that moment. It's like I done left. I don't know where I am.
No, yeah, I think there's that provides a point of harm potential or potential for harm in relationships, in internally within oneself, all kind of things. If it goes to a place that is beyond that control, and that was one of the things that Greg was saying a lot last week about controlling, and not with the iron hand and fist, and I got control of my emotions. It's with an understanding that we're always processing. And to your point, Jay, the knowledge of self allows for me to understand that although I was emotional, it was attached to the goodness and the celebration of some of the experiences I had with my cousin. And I was speaking highly of him in regard to what we were discussing, but the circumstances did that thing that you just mentioned in terms of you don't know when it's going to happen. You don't, the emotions are purely, I think more so than anything, just something that exists in here when sometimes you're just like, ooh, where'd that come from? And it's just something attached to something else or attached to a piece of you that you have not explored or interacted with, or, you know, you made those comments also. Some people go through life and not having had something that gives them a certain feeling or emotion or feeling because they're very close. They're close. Bob, your thoughts on this question? What's the difference between emotions and feelings?
You've jumped topics, and Lisa's commented, Jay Dwayne's commented. There are things I've got to say that I don't think speak to the question that you're asking. So I'm really not sure where I should go right this second. But
Bob, is this your first time on the show, Bob?
There we go. Thank you very much. I have license, as they say in the academic world. Some of what we're touching upon, and I don't know whether Jay Dwayne was giving you crap about you should have done this, you should have done that with Lisa or not. But you're not a professional in terms of your relationship with Lisa. And therefore, I would argue that you should have done what you did. You should have done what is natural and right for you to do, not what Lisa expects or needs or wants necessarily, if that's not what you can bring to the table. And a professional should do something different. But a friend or a relative or whatever, you know, I'm made to think about a situation. My boys, one time I asked them, they were like 10 and 12, and they did something. And I asked them, I said, why did you do that? And they looked at me like I was crazy. And I said, no, seriously. They said, Dad, You are warm and happy. She is cold and dark. And Felton, I've told you this story before. Very few people, maybe just you. And they were talking about a person that would describe me as a thinker, not a feeler, a cold person, not adequately filling their bucket of needs emotionally, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so from one perspective, one person perspective, I'm the inadequate one from a feeling perspective. From another two-person perspective, I'm the abundant one from a feeling perspective and an emotional support perspective. And what's right? Well, I think the right thing is being honest with who we are and conveying ourselves as who we are, and perhaps working to cultivate a greater bit of empathy and a greater sense of connectivity. At the same time, if one person can call me the cold fish and another person can call me the warm, empathetic, this, that, or the other thing, do I listen to all these different judgments, or do I decide for myself? And do I execute myself as I am? And then is it, whose responsibility is it? Is it my responsibility to expect someone to meet my needs emotionally the way I need them met? Or is it my responsibility to go to the person that will meet them the way I need them to be met? Is it the person's responsibility to meet me where I am, or the person's responsibility to be authentic to who they are? And I think we've got all of this different dynamic. Myers-Briggs has thinking and feeling in two different categories for a reason. They're two different predominant aspects of personality. And if I expect someone to be who they are not, that's my bad. If I expect somebody to be who I know them to be and they fail at that, that's a different bad. But if I'm bringing the expectation to a person that's not who they are, that's my bad. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think you're kind of placing emotions and feelings in the eye of the beholder.
I'm really not even answering that question. I'm talking about what we've been talking about.
Yeah, but I'm placing the answer to your question in that realm. You have to be answering some of that question because you're using emotions and feelings, and it sounds like it's up to the person that you're interacting with as to how that's going to be interpreted, whether it's going to be about emotion. You're talking about your sons interpreting ideas of your feelings and emotions in a way that makes you look one way, and you're talking about somebody else interpreting them in a way that makes you look a whole other. So I think it's an internal.
And I'm just talking really about reactions and actions and levels of empathy and levels of connectivity, emotions and feelings. See, I think feelings drive emotions, and I think that emotions can resurrect feelings.
Yeah, that's a good, that's a dance. They do a heck of a dance. They always go to tango. Yeah.
To more specifically to the question, I think feelings drive emotions, and emotions resurrect feelings, and that's how I think they kind of lace together. And thoughts can trigger all of that too. You can't leave thoughts out of any of this. because you don't remember anything without thinking about it. And so the thinking about it resurrects all of that sort of thing. So all of these things are so interconnected.
Yeah.
It's
That's
just about how we
unpack.
It's just about how we choose to use those different things to operate in our world.
Yeah.
And,
So yeah, principles. I think a lot of what you discuss comes back to principles. I think a lot of what you discuss comes back to knowing yourself in those interactions. But that idea of how much emotion and feeling are intertwined, and one connects the other, and the other one connects to back to the thing. That is, I think, at the core of any conversation about something that has to do with how you're prompted to react to certain situations, adversity, and what have you. And Lisa, I'm coming to you, Bob. You got one last thought?
I want to say one more thing that's really personal to the three of us, you, Lisa, and me.
You sure you want to say it?
I do, because I think it's meaningful. You and I are so much alike in so many ways, and yet Lisa reacts to you differently than she reacts to me, in the same kind of tone. And the curious thing is why.
I got an answer.
Okay.
And so it is the expectation of what what I expect to be able to receive from Felton versus what I expect to receive from Bob. And although I have not known Felton personally for that many years, because of the familiar relationship, race-wise, culture-wise, as well as biological, I am going to have a less guarded relationship with him. But I do want to ask something, because you brought up a point that about Felton being who Felton is, and this doesn't apply to Felton, because I have this question in my head that a lot of times women have these expectations from men, and then men are just gonna be men. Okay. And I know that's where y'all thought I'd go the whole time. But since Bob brought this up, that hey, Felton was great because Felton was being Grelton. But in a romantic construct, I have been told that, basically the emotional thing being a feminine thing. At what point does one person go a little outside of their natural instinct within dealing with someone that is outside of their natural space? And I'm sure you all know that it's been claimed that women do it more often. So women are generally not as aligned with the sports stuff, right? But you'll see more women less begrudgingly standing by her man at a sports bar versus men more begrudgingly going to chick flicks, like within long-term relationships. So when Bob is like, oh, well, Felton's being Felton. So even if Felton is more logical, the diagram I seen is a healthy existence, is part logic, part emotion within a larger wise mind. So what's the medium where, because I had to tell a guy one time, matter of fact, it's my son, Jeremy, right? I'm wearing all this Air Force stuff. And he's like, oh, you're just too emotional. You're just, the crying means nothing to me. And so I said, well, you didn't mind it when I was nursing you, right? You didn't mind it when you had the thing the metal that stuck through your arm and I picked you up and got the, those. So at what point does the man say, yeah, women are emotional, so I need to be a little considerate and give a little something room for that? Okay, I know Felton about the
I have the answer.
I know.
It's a simple one. It is whatever the situation calls for. Jeremy was hungry. He needed to eat. He had a metal thing stuck in his arm. He needed it out. But whatever was taking place that day, he said, you too emotional. It was
Yeah,
not with
so it was okay then. It's okay when you have a need. But if I have a need, I need you to stomp those emotions down, mama.
that might be the case, and it's not fair. We know that. But
You know what though?
no, this is all just so wonderful. Jay, get your 2 cents in, because and look
No.
here. Hold on, one more point. And this is not even
go
a
ahead.
point. This is not even a point. This is just how we roll here. Next week's show, Lisa, is slated to be the consequences of expectation. How about that? Go ahead, Bob. I mean, go ahead, Jay.
No, I was going to respond to Lisa too, because Lisa, me and my brothers, well, the one that's right above me, and then and the one that's right below me have the same conflict, because we take on what are considered traditional or stereotypical feminine traits. Like, I told my wife, my ex-wife, that she was pregnant before she knew she was pregnant. Every time my children are sick, I knew my children were sick before she knew that they were sick. I was the one that was up cooking and cleaning and making sure that the house is good. I'm the one that decorated the house and all of that. You know what I mean? My older brother is the same exact way, and my younger brother is the same exact way, where we're just attentive to all of those needs. And it was funny because I do remember my ex-wife saying one time, I went and got something, and I said, like, when did you get all those new clothes? And she's like, do you miss anything? And I was like, oh. And so I don't fit in traditional male settings. So when people are saying stuff, I'm like, yeah, you're not talking about me, because the only sports I like is track and field. I don't like football. I haven't liked basketball since 1996, 97. So it's like, I don't fit in any of those, and don't ask me to work on your car because it will not move. But all of the traditional male things I don't do. You know what I mean? But what is traditional to a woman, like, I married a woman who wasn't that really nurturing in those capacities. Like, she was great with certain motherly roles, and she was great, but like that whole umbrella, no, that was a lot of me in all of that. Like, I even knew when something was wrong in her womb, like, no, we need to go. And it ended up our daughter was born early because I like, something ain't right. I'm feeling something ain't right. So I struggle with the same thing that you're talking about, because I'm on the opposite end. So I have to sit in these conversations. And here's the catcher. Since I started Love is a Parable, more men are emotional with me in private. Like, our viewership is mostly men, but they will not participate. But in private, that's when the emotions take place and all of that other stuff. And I'm like, bro, why are we so emotional? Like, they're so emotional, I stop. But that's because of societal construct that have conditioned us where we can't publicly display. And men find safe spaces with men because men understand that part. Like, people are questioning, they're calling it the later term became bromance, but they're studying like why men are loyal to men. And one of the things that are coming out is that because men can be safe with men to be human, they can't be safe to be human with their female counterpart, because there's still an expectation on the manhood of man.
That's a whole different show, but the same. I mean, it's a continuation. It's another hour of discussion. I'm thoroughly supportive of the ideas and the understandings that take place, especially in the Black male community, considering how we do something that some people don't get to see, and that show real love for each other, and especially coming from certain backgrounds and knowing what was survived, what was shared and survived. Yeah, it's a different type of energy there. But I do want to say, I always appreciate you guys in this space, and we could do this for hours and hours and hours, because there's just one thing leads to another. But Lisa, when you brought up, expectation, and there's consequences for that, boy. So that's actually what we're planning on discussing next week. Hopefully, we get there, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. Man, I definitely appreciate you guys. Jay, look like you need to take a snapshot and put that on the album cover somewhere, because that's what it looks like you in the look like you get ready to start belting out some Barry White or Dwelle or something, man. Dwelle, that's what it looks like, man. Yeah, there you go. There you go. Go ahead, bro.
Yo, I love Dwelle.
Yeah,
And
man.
a lot of people don't even talk about him. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, he's that artist that everyone should know. But I'm kind of glad they don't, because it keeps it at a certain level that I can appreciate. Hey, listen, we'll have an RB show sometime down the road too. Lisa, thanks for getting here. Your input is always welcome and worthwhile. And yeah, I got some tough love, but it's love. And that was one of the questions I didn't get to attach to this situation. We'll get there. There you go. Hearts up. Jay, thank you as always. Bob, much appreciated that you share the time with us. And Danya, thanks for doing what you do, buddy. Y'all have a wonderful night.